Now, this year marks the 70th anniversary of the death of Mahatma Gandhi, a leading light, of course, of the Indian independence movement from the British, and a man whose creed of non-violence influenced generations of world leaders. In 1948, he was assassinated just 6 months after independence, and since then his grandson, Rajmohan Gandhi, has himself been an advocate and activist for human rights. He's also the author of several books exploring his grandfather's legacy, and I'm delighted to say he joins me here in the studios today. It's good to see you, Rajmohan, and thanks very much indeed for being here.
Great to be here.
Lots of discussion these days about populism. And populist leaders, and only today, of course, we saw the results in the Italian elections and the success of anti-establishment parties there. Whenever I think of your grandfather and his legacy, the first word that springs to my mind is he was a populist.
He was a popular man with a great many people, but he was not a populist. He was willing to speak to his people very frankly. And when they went wrong, he was willing to speak very bluntly to them.
But isn't that precisely what Donald Trump does?
No. Donald Trump is exciting his base. Gandhi was...
Your grandfather did that too.
He was exciting not his base, he was exciting the people to fight for justice. He was not asking them to bully the weak. So that's the very opposite of Donald Trump.
And indeed, that's the distinct. I mean, can you have populism that is peaceful, that is inclusive, that does make sense? And if you can, I would argue that that's precisely what your grandfather was.
He was for the common person. But remember that he was not just fighting for India's independence from the British, he was tackling the high and low in Indian society. He was wanting Indians to be tolerant towards each other, to respect one another. You know, we have opinions about our neighboring groups, we don't have knowledge about them. He wanted people to be respectful of one another, but he also said, if there is injustice, fight for it, fight against it. Absolutely so.
What would you make of Narendra Modi? A highly divisive figure,
yes.
A Hindu nationalist, a man who would say that he's a proud Indian. What would your grandfather think of him, do you think?
He would say that, Narendra Modi, you're working very hard, I appreciate that, but you are not repudiating those who are, to repeat the phrase, bullying the weak. India is a country where the weakest should feel proud. Not the strong only, but the weakest should feel proud. The minorities should feel proud. The so-called untouchables should feel proud. That's not happening today.
Has it ever happened since independence?
Sure. When Nehru was Prime Minister of India, many things were unsatisfactory. But the weak did feel that India was their country. The state was tilted towards the weak and the poor. That's sadly not the case today.
So what went wrong then in that huge social experiment in democracy,
yes.
the biggest democracy on the planet?
Yes.
What went wrong between 1948 and the advent of Narendra Modi?
Many things happened worldwide also. But it's also true that the Congress party became comfortable, became corrupt in many ways. And so people did lose the trust that they had in the Congress party. That was a very major factor. But there were global trends. And so we have seen this all over the world. You want to blame a particular group when things don't go right. So the immigrants in the United States, the African Americans in the United States, the Hispanics in the United States, the minorities in other parts of the world, and in India too, or in the Islamic countries, the minorities, the non-Muslims were blamed in many Islamic countries, and in India, Hindu nationalism is doing something similar, blaming the Muslims, blaming the Christians. And that appeals to some people. People want to blame somebody other than themselves.
I mean, last year, of course, we had the 70th anniversary of partition.
Yes.
And that was something that your grandfather would not have wanted.
He certainly
Absolutely not. Looking back on the last 70 years, has it worked? Was it the right thing?
Well, nobody says that partition can be reversed or should be reversed or should be undone. We have to accept it. But certainly the fact that partition took place showed that the people, the leaders of India, and I have to say the leaders and people of the United Kingdom were also involved, were not able to create an honorable settlement, an honorable compromise, which would have satisfied people's aspirations, tackled their grievances without this extreme measure of partition. But partition has taken place. We accept that. But there are many Muslims in India. There are still many Hindus and Christians in Pakistan. The minorities must have rights.
His legacy, your grandfather's legacy, is absolutely enormous. And I'm not just thinking in terms of his legacy on the idea of non-violence as a way of achieving what you want, but his effect on world leaders. I'm talking about Nelson Mandela, and I'm talking about Dr. Martin Luther King, who's the anniversary this year, 50 years of his assassination. That idea of non-violence, of trying to seek common cause with people through non-violent means, in this day and age, is that still a point of view that is valid? Is it still a point of view that withstands the shocks of a Trump or withstands the shocks of the far right in India or wherever?
You know, it has to be valid. People get angry. People want to blame somebody else. But surely that's not the way the world is meant to be. We know what has happened when the far right has taken over in country after country. After all, Hitler and fascist Italy, and there's so many other examples. So we have those examples to warn us about what the world needs. And so there's absolutely no alternative to accepting that even though things are very difficult and we are tempted to blame some other people, some other group for the mess we are in, we have to accept common responsibility. All of us are responsible, and we absolutely cannot afford to let the powerful coerce, bully the weak.
And on that note, we'll leave it there. Raj Mohan Gandhi, it's good to have you in. Thanks you for joining us.
Thank you.